We've got Julio missing the game with back stiffness. We've got Brian Wu getting hit by a line drive in the dugout. And we've got the Mariners dropping game one of this 4-game series to the Houston Astros. What is up? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back and welcome into the Seattle Mariners post-game recap. The Mariners dropped this one tonight 9-2 to the Houston Astros. They fall to 28-21 on the season. They do remain in first place in the American League West. As always, before I dive into the video, the 3 things I need, if you can do for me, hit the like button. It helps out tremendously. Subscribe if you're new or lurking, and don't forget to comment your thoughts on the team and on the game down below. Appreciate everybody watching, win or lose, for these recaps. Let's do the scoring recap real quick before we dive into the game. If you're an Astros fan, you'll enjoy the scoring recap. Mariners probably not as much. Top of the first, Rowdy Tellez single on a sharp line, or that's what Game Day says, singles on a line drive to Jake Myers. It scores J.P. Crawford. Mariners took a 1-0 lead. Top of the second, Dylan Moore homered on a fly ball to center field. That made it 2-0. Bottom of the third, Paredes grounded into a force out. That scored Cam Smith and made it 2-1 Mariners. Same inning, Jose Altuve was out on a sacrifice fly to right. That scored Dubon, made it a 2-2 ball game. In the bottom of the fourth, Dubon singled on a ground ball to right field that scored Jake Myers, making it 3-2 Astros. In the same inning, Jeremy Pena tripled to left field that scored Cam Smith and Mauricio Dubon to make it 5-2 Houston. Bottom of the fifth, it became the Jose Altuve show as he homered on a fly ball to left center field, made it 6-2 Astros. He then also homered in the bottom of the sixth on a fly ball to left field that scored Paredes to make it 8-2 Astros. And Victor Caratini in the bottom of the sixth singled on a line drive to left field that scored Yainer Diaz to make it 9-2 Astros. And that was all she wrote for this one tonight. Little bits of some good news. Dan said Brian Wu he thinks is fine. No worries about making his start on Saturday. Gets a line drive foul ball. I think it was off the bat of Paredes actually in the 7th or 8th. Went in there and just hit his shin or close to his knee area. So looks like Woo's okay. Man, I mean, just when it rains, it pours in a game, right? Nothing can go right. You're sitting in the dugout and you're getting taken out. But good news is it sounds like Woo will be fine for Saturday. And Julio was scratched with some back tightness, stiffness. Always a little concerned about that stuff, but certainly not the worst case scenario there. So hopefully Julio is fine day to day. You would hope he doesn't miss this series, but if that's all it is, not the worst case scenario. But hopefully Julio is back in there tomorrow. Would be ideal for the Mariners because definitely want him in here for a crucial series. Lost in all that is we did have George Kirby's season debut tonight. The line score is going to look pretty rough for him, but I actually thought he threw the ball pretty well. The velocity looked great. The command was still there. It did hit Pena a couple times, maybe not quite as George Kirby command as we would hope, but his first start of the year, that's going to happen. But overall, I actually thought Kirby looked perfectly fine. The couple runs he gave up in the third inning that tied the game at 2, one of them I thought should have been a double play ball that Williamson kind of bobbled. They were only able to get one out there. Cam Smith had a single in that inning that was a broken bat with an exit velo of 70. So a little bit of, BABIP, and then there was a walk. So I thought he was fine. Then in the fourth inning, when he got knocked out, he had 2 quick outs, and then it just kind of came unraveled. Obviously, Dubon's single was hit well. Pena's was crushed off the wall. So there was definitely hard hits there. But, in the same vein, he was 1 pitch away from getting out of it. Hoping for a little bit better, obviously, but for his first start back, I thought Kirby was all right. The stuff looked good. He said he felt fine after the game. I think he touched 98, 99 in this one, so nothing I'm worried about. Good to see George Kirby back out on the bump, and he'll get better here as the season goes along. Hard to really break down his outing too much because, again, first start back, you don't want to hit Pena twice. That's frustrating. The second hit by pitch, he had him with 2 strikes. And then, Kirby, I think in the fourth did struggle to put guys away a little bit. That is something that we have seen from Kirby in the past where, he can get strikeouts, but he's not a strikeout guy necessarily, a huge strikeout guy. It's more of the strikeouts that come from just how many strikes he throws. So maybe a little bit of some issues putting guys away. But again, overall, I actually didn't think he was that bad tonight. I think if you play that game again, Williamson turns that into a double play. That game stays 2-1. He wiggles off the hook in the fourth inning or something with 2 outs and doesn't give up, the hits with the 2 outs. And, and of course, that's not what happened, obviously, but long way for me to say I thought George Kirby pitched okay. The offense kind of reminded me of a 2024 offensive performance where, they worked the pitch count of the starter. They put some base runners on, but again, just couldn't get that big hit. Polanco left a lot of guys on base. I thought Cal had some tough at-bats early. He ended up having 2 hits. Then they chase McCullers in the 5th and get the bases loaded. Don't do anything. I think in the 7th, they had a couple men on, and Solano grounds on double play. In the 8th or 9th, they had a couple men on. So very 2024 offensive game where they're getting the walks, they're getting the base runners. But you remember last year, one of my things that I always talk about is who's going to put one into the gap? Who's going to be the one that delivers the bases clearing doubles, stuff like that we didn't get last year. That's kind of what tonight felt like. I didn't think they just went down, easily. It wasn't a game where, I didn't think McCullers carved them up necessarily. He did have a lot of strikeouts in this one for sure, but they had opportunities there, but just couldn't cash in. Even in the first inning, they get the run on the Rowdy single. I thought Leote hit a ball pretty well there in the first, and I thought off the bat was going to be in the gap. It wasn't. It was caught. Demo gets the home run. Then, JP reaches on an error or a fielder's choice, and then Polanco can't cash in. So, despite losing 9-2, there were some opportunities for the Mariners early in this game to open it up a little bit and put maybe 4 or 5 runs on the board. And again, to McCullers' credit, he worked through that and had some strikeouts and took care of business. Obviously missing Julio in this game as well, but I don't think that was necessarily the main issue for the Mariners tonight. I think it was just, Kirby's first start not being super sharp. Then you had your kind of, not as hot relievers, you're not as solid relievers come in and give up a few runs. And, offense that really just couldn't get it done with runners on and either add on or claw their way back into it in this game. So put all that together and you get your 9-2 result that you have here. This was a series that coming into it, I would have taken a split had that, had it been offered to me, which it wasn't. So, it is what it is, but it's a series that, if you can get out of this and win 2, you maintain a 3.5 game lead in the division, you feel pretty good. You still have an opportunity for that. It certainly becomes tougher, right? Winning game 1 is always nice. They pull this one out and we're talking about a split. We're going, hey, just, find a way to win one of the last 3 and you're in pretty good shape. Now you essentially have to go win a series, right? And win 2 out of 3 to get that split. You feel good. You've got Wu and Castillo going this weekend. Hancock's been better. So you feel okay with, ground ball guy going tomorrow that he can keep you in it. But, it's not going to be easy, right? Houston is 9-time defending AL West champs. They're going to keep fighting. They're not going to go down easily at all in this AL West. And it's going to be a dogfight throughout the summer. We're not even into the summer yet. Texas isn't going to go away. The Angels are playing good ball. Oh, the A's are really scuffling, but they're still going to be pesky. I do think it's going to come down to Houston, Texas, or Seattle. And I do think there's going to be a lot of back and forth. Just prepare for it. There's going to be a series where Texas beats Houston. Then Houston's going to beat Seattle, and Seattle's going to beat Texas. Kind of like in the NFC West when it used to be the Seahawks couldn't beat the Rams. Was it the Rams couldn't beat the 49ers or something? The 49ers couldn't beat the Seahawks, whatever, something like that it was. I think you're going to see a lot of that. So, it'll be a long summer. I don't mean that long as in depressingly long. I mean, just there's a lot of baseball to be played here, and this division will not be decided in a series in May. And that would have been the same had Seattle come out and won tonight and won 3 out of 4. It would not decide the division, although it would give the Mariners a nice leg up. So, hopefully they can go ahead and bounce back. Tomorrow, hopefully Julio's back in there. I'm not sure what the status on Yordan Alvarez is. I think he's eligible to come off the injured list tomorrow. If he wants to take 3 more days off, I would respect that 100%. If he wants to just enjoy a weekend before coming back in, it's completely understandable. Yordan, you need your R&R, a little rest and relaxation before coming back. So we'll see what ends up happening there, but not the end of the world by any means. It's game 1 of a series. It's one that you never, they were up 2-0. They said there were opportunities to maybe open this game up early a little bit. But ultimately it was a game that got away from you and just was not super competitive. I will say, as frustrating as losing a 4-3 or even that White Sox game 1-0 was, I do prefer when the games are close. I'm sitting there in these games. I'm sure most of you the same way. You've moved on to checking something on your phone or kind of doing other things. Those are the worst games. Like, even though 3-3, you're sitting there biting your nails going, oh, come on, and it's stressful. It's a good stressful. It feels good when the game's close. It's fun. Games like this are just awful after the 5 innings, and you're just hoping it gets done and nobody gets hurt. And then unfortunately, you got Brian Wu getting stung by line drives in the dugout. So, hey, I guess, Astros Mariners fans can unite on that, right? I think in Seattle, Spencer Arrighetti during BP got hit by a ball in the wrist and hasn't, pitched since. I'm certainly not trying to make light of that by any means, but both our teams seem to be just getting, they're just standing there and they're getting clipped. So frustrating, when stuff like that happens. And again, it sounds like Wu's going to be okay, so not worried about it. But, at least when injuries happen on the field, it's like, okay, the guy was trying to make a play. Wu's just trying to sit there and watch a baseball game. Honestly, you do wonder, like, starting pitchers that are not pitching on that day, should they just be in the clubhouse watching the game? I know it's like it's part of the camaraderie of it and everything. And I know that it's so rare for something like that to happen. But maybe you do, right? Like, they can watch on the TV in the clubhouse or something, the starting pitchers that aren't going. Relievers are out in the bullpen, so they're pretty safe. Bench players is obviously different because, they've kind of got to stay active being there in case they're needed in the game. But, I've always kind of wondered that a little bit, but I know it's about the camaraderie and being to the team. So let's dive into the box score here. I've got it. There it is. George Kirby, 3 2/3, 6 hits, 5 runs, all earned, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. Again, I'm not going to praise an outing where a guy has a 12 ERA in it, but that third inning probably could have gone a lot differently. If the double play ball is, Williamson doesn't bobble that, might get out of that 2-1. And he was 1 out, 1 pitch away from getting out of that 4th inning unscathed. I thought the stuff looked pretty good. Sorry, I had to pause the video for a second there. Lost my train of thought. Yeah, I'm not going to praise the start for Kirby there where, he gives up 5 earned runs, but the stuff looked good. And the most important thing is George Kirby is back and he's feeling good after the start. Everything else, you'd have liked to get him 4 or 5 innings there, giving up, 1 or 2 runs. But, we kind of figured there might be a chance that he struggles a little bit in his first start back. And then the rest of it was, Bizardo goes an inning and a third, 3 hits, 1 run. It was earned on the Altuve home run. Strikes out a batter. Tough inning for Jesse Hahn. 1 inning, gave up 3 hits, 3 runs, all earned, 1 walk, no strikeouts. That inning really kind of messed, I think, with the rest of the bullpen, because I think ideally there, Hahn goes 2 or even 3 and finishes it up. Maybe Snyder pitches an inning, but unfortunately there, Hahn only giving you 1 inning. Snyder pitches the 7th inning, shutout inning with the strikeout, and then Gabe Spire pitches a clean 8th inning there. I'm sure Dan would have preferred not to use Spire, but, Hahn couldn't give any length, so you go to Snyder for 1. Outside of that, there's really nobody else down there. And Aaron Goldsmith did make a good point in the broadcast. If people are frustrated about Spire pitching in that spot, the Astros, unless they get Jordan back tomorrow, have essentially no lefties in their lineup. So this might be a series where you're not relying on Spire as much. Now, Spire is certainly capable of getting right-handers out. I'd rather see Spire against righties than, Bizardo, Hahn, Taylor. Taylor's gone down to Tacoma with Kirby coming back, but you know what I'm getting at there. For sure, I'd rather see Spire, but maybe a series where he's not going to be as much of a go-to guy. So that's probably why Dan went to him over anybody else and was willing to use him in a game like this. But, and I know some people are frustrated with Dan going to Spire there, but Jesse Hahn's got to do a better job in that 6th inning getting through it, so you don't have to do it. Maybe you still throw Hahn out there. I wouldn't have been against it. Hahn threw 28 pitches. Maybe you say, dude, you're throwing 45 today, and we're going to call somebody up tomorrow. That could have been an option as well. Pitch count for George Kirby. He threw 72 pitches, 49 strikes. Again, I thought pretty typical Kirby command control. Did he walk? He did walk a batter and hit 2. The second hit on Pena wasn't quite as bad. It was not a good 2-strike pitch, but it was definitely not as bad as the first one that was just clear off the back. A little rust for Kirby. I thought overall it was the same George Kirby we've seen, so I have no concerns about him. Let's move into the offensive box score. Mariners do collect 10 hits, 4 walks. They strike out 15 times. Again, a very 2024 Mariners offensive output. Like, the 10 hits is good. The 4 walks is all right. A lot of strikeouts, obviously. And just not cashing in with runners on. McCullers has been dreadful this season. It was really even hard to gauge him today. I'm sure Astros fans are having trouble with that too, because there were some moments where I thought he looked really good in this game. That kind of wipeout slider he had to look fantastic when he was throwing it down and in and locating. Guys were swinging over the top of it. But there was also some walks that were just not even competitive, like the first one to JP. And, if you look at McCullers StatCast page, he's been awful this season. But this is also a guy that's made 3 starts this year and missed the last 2 years completely. So, you got to give the guy a little time to get back in it. We're not talking about George Kirby missing a month of starts. We're talking a guy that hasn't pitched in maybe since that Mariners, coming into this year, that Mariners playoff game. I'm sure he pitched later in that series playoff run as well for Houston. But so it might just take some time for McCullers to get back in there. I don't think this is necessarily the case of a bad pitcher shutting you out. And again, the Mariners put some base runners, just couldn't really cash in against him. JP was 0 for 4 with a walk and a run scored. Polanco was 0 for 3 strikeouts. I do wonder if you start moving Polanco down a little bit. It's been a few weeks now of just scuffling. The overall numbers are good because, the April was amazing. And Polanco's still fine. You still want him in there for sure. Tough to move him down, though, when Julio's not in the lineup. I mean, who are you moving him down for right now? I mean, you could get kind of cute and maybe put Randy because he walks a bunch up there. Cal could move into the 2 spot. It wouldn't be the worst thing. Maybe Dylan Morgan's left-handed pitching would make some sense up there. But if you look up and down the lineup today, are you going to move Rowdy up to the 2 spot? No. Leody Taveras? No. Mastroboni? No. Williamson? No. So without Julio, Polanco kind of does, I think, have to stay in that 2 hole. Garver pinched hit was 1 for 2. Cal was 2 for 5. Randy was 2 for 4 with a walk. Rowdy was 2 for 3 with an RBI single. So, some production there, but when those guys came up with runners on is when they struggled and didn't get it in. So I'll never be mad at Randy having a game where he reached base 3 times or Cal twice. But, if they could have just sequenced those hits when they had the runners on, maybe this is a game the Mariners do win. That's just not how baseball works sometimes. But, kind of like I said, some unfortunate maybe sequencing of hits tonight for the Mariners. Solano pinched hit for Tellez was 0 for 2. Mariners did have a couple runners on. And if you had any slim hope of maybe clawing back into the game, Donovan Solano made sure that hope was fleeting for you as he grounded in to a double play very quickly. Cole Young continues to mash in Tacoma. Again, I do think maybe it's time. I know Solano and Cole Young aren't really the same position, but Young could play second. Dylan Moore could play some first. Rowdy could just play full time at first. The clock has got to be ticking on Donovan Solano. I'm really not sure how much longer he has. Maybe they're in a position where they're on the road and they just don't want to, having guys fly out to Houston. But I can't imagine we aren't close to seeing some kind of move made because you've got Cole Young close. They talked in the offseason how they remember there was even some rumors that Cole Young could be your opening day second baseman. There was even some kind of conversation about it. Struggled a little bit out of the gate in Tacoma, was hitting the ball hard, just not getting results. Now he's getting the results, and you've got kind of a mess at second right now. I mean, Demo does hit the home run today, but you're getting a lot of Miles Mastroboni there. You're getting Leo Rivas has been fine, but I think we all know he's not your starting second baseman. And Demo should be a guy that's more playing against lefties, playing some in right, playing some second, some short, some third, even some first if you need it. Not your just everyday second baseman. So I do wonder if we are getting close to something there. Leody Taveras was 0 for 4, did hit that ball hard in the first inning, but also had a tough at-bat there, a poor at-bat in the 5th. Bases loaded, 1 out. You do something there at 5-2. Even a walk, a base hit, 5-3, keep the line moving. Even a sac fly puts you a bloop and a blast away. Instead, he strikes out in that at-bat. Again, talking about the sequencing, right? If he hits that deep fly ball that he hit in the first inning, the game's 5-3. I'm not saying the Mariners win. They probably don't, but, then you're a bloop and a blast away. So, unfortunate there for Taveras. A poor at-bat when it was needed the most. Dylan Moore did have a nice day, 2 for 4 with the home run and a run scored, his 8th of the season. Mastroboni was 0 for 1 with a walk. Leo Rivas also 0 for 1 with a walk, and Ben Williamson 1 for 4. When Julio's not in that lineup, it really just, you got Leody Taveras batting 6th. And especially you're already missing like Luke Raley. Think of that at-bat in the 6th. Would have felt a lot better with Luke Raley up in that spot than Leody Taveras, right? And who knows? Luke wasn't guaranteed to do anything. But you do see where the injuries, are impacting this team and stuff like that. And you see then when you get a Julio scratch, just, then Master Boney has to go in there, and that 6 through 9 just looks, it's tough, right? You hope you can get a couple walks and a hit through there from that bottom of the order. And then if the top of the order isn't producing with runners on, you get games like this. Bounce back, win tomorrow, even up this series. I think this series is really going to be a dogfight. I could be wrong. I think it's going to be a lot of back and forth in this one. Again, I would not be shocked at all if we see a split. Hopefully right now, because the other option would be the Mariners, in terms of positivity, because otherwise it's them winning 3, which I would love, but going to be hard to do that. And then the other options are losing the series and getting swept. Obviously losing the series wouldn't be a disaster, and even being swept wouldn't be a disaster on the season. But man, it would put you out of first place and really, one, put a major damper on this road trip, and to do everything you've done all season and then to be in second place would be extremely disappointing. So you at least got to find a way to win 1 here, I think, for sure, ideally 2. Have a great night, everybody. Like, comment, subscribe, and as always, go Mariners. Peace.